want to see.
Well, good day.
Good day, Sevan. How are you?
Hello, good day, Sevan. How are you?
Hey, Stefan and Christina. I'm doing really well, as always. And
Gorgeous.
I'm super excited for today.
Yeah, so nice to talk to you again. I mean, every time we just decide to talk to you a week ago before the talk, we just start to feeling your energies, that accelerated, energies and so on. So that's very amazing. Thank you
Yeah.
for joining us again.
Well, it's you're more than welcome. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I definitely get like more of a etheric page, like, hey, it's time for this, because I was just thinking about like, oh man, I got to get back on the circuit at least for a moment, and I was like, who can I get on with? Because I don't want to, I don't want to turn my system on. It's just like way too much going on to manage, and but then I got a message from you, so I was like, okay, let's do it, and then I somehow, because I went out of town, and then I was needing to figure out which dates I was going to be going out of town, so I kind of blew past the date we were expecting. But obviously, it came in perfectly because I got a chance to, even experience some more stuff and also get some of the things out that I needed to kind of get out first, and then look at and then perfect. You know how that works. You can introduce something right away, and then you're like 3 days later, you've kind of made some changes. So it's good that I got a chance to get on the show, because I've really I have some new stuff, as always, to introduce. But also, it's still the same old thing. I think today is going to be a really good recapping on what's necessary, like the basics. Sometimes you really have to go back to the basics, because that's what also simplifies things for people, so that they can really enjoy, when you get more into the complexity. Because, some people say, they'll always come at you and they say, oh, that just sounds so complex to me. And, see, a connoisseur is going to want they're going to want the embroidery. They're going to want all of the workings and the finishings, right? But, someone who's nervous and a little bit scared, they're just going to want simple stuff. So I think it's always important to contain that within the message.
Yeah, we don't have much on the plate, because we know you're catching up with things, but it is indeed a really good energy today that we're coming together with this little Mars-Venus mingle that we have going on today. Really nice energy, and that just brings us to one of our points that we want to discuss with you a little bit, and it is about astrology. And we've taken, I think in our first show we talked with you about blockages and the chakras, and how to open them, how to open the portals and whatnot. We want to go back there a little bit and go just a little bit deeper, about the boundaries that we're doing ourselves. And I think Christina wants to send you a picture that we did today for that. Basically, we just took the word boundaries apart and realized that you're bound by Aries energy, by Mars energy, if you make a boundary, and it being the first sign, another word would be frontier, where the frontier, the first level, which is Aries, is the same word as being bound by Aries inside, by this, childlike energy. Not to offend any Aries, there's nothing to do with how you actually are, but this is the aspects that we have all in us. And the first three signs are the childlike signs, the spring. And Aries can get a little stubborn, other signs too, of course. But there we see this energy where you build yourself a boundary, because that's where they are, the boundaries, just in us, in our heads. That's kind of the first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I could definitely go on and on about these kind of topics, and so I will elaborate, just a little bit. I would tell people these days, especially about, even the word astrology just has these triggers to it. Like the first time, we hear these words, or you say those words to people, they immediately begin to think about the newspaper, and then like this horoscope that's in the newspaper that basically tells you really what you want to hear, and then concludes it what you should watch out for, and then obviously it throws a lover in there, and then that's what people think astrology is. And so I really like to get people familiar with more of the word astronomy, because when they hear astronomy, then they think of scientists, they think of expensive telescopes, and they think of the class that they didn't even make it to in school in most cases. And so, but they're the exact same thing. And this is also like external people, I would say, really would be more familiar with the mechanics of astronomy before they would be familiar with the mechanics of astrology. So that's like the same thing of why people are more familiar with what goes on externally than with what goes on externally rather than what goes on internally, right? And so, just in saying that, I guess we could start talking about astronomy first, but then flip it inside out and then see how the exact same thing takes place inside of the body. And, obviously there's a major development stage within each human, but everyone doesn't start off at the same stage of development. That's kind of how you keep the whole spectrum all present at one time. So if you have, let's say, Libras, Scorpios, Tauruses, all of those pieces to the pie or the phi, and you have them all present at just different times and spaces, then you get the whole continuum. And so this is why we actually have access to all space and all time on the dimension that we're on now, because there's beings here. Like, I was even looking at this lady the other day, and I was just thinking about how many different experiences that she's had. Just, it was kind of a regular person, as you would say it, but, everyone is not regular at all. People have experiences, they have things that they've done, the decisions they've made. They've had kids, they've had scares, they've had accidents, like car accidents, they've had people die. So, this is like drama every day, and each person holds that. People have family members. Some of the family members are into other things and connected to certain things. So when you calculate all of that, you get this huge spectrum of every single essence of everything, just all available and accessible within the beings that are around us. So once we tap more into this, obviously getting out of duality and tapping into the mirrors and seeing and feeling those other beings that are present here, because let's just face it, things are geocentric at this point. We see the world based on what's going on around us, and everything is rotating around us. Like, I'm even rotating around you now. I'm on a different orbit, right? So it's in that same tent to where now we begin to look at all these other planets, stars, quasars. Some are like the shooting stars. They light up for a moment, then they burn out. Some are like fixed stars. They just stay there forever doing the same thing. And, some have a different kind of shine. So, when you really start getting into that and becoming a connoisseur of that, whether you want to call it astronomy or astrology or, there's even, tarot, all of the different systems that really connect into the stars, language, all these systems that connect into the stars. When you want to basically you read stars, being like a star searcher in a sense, that's when you get this opportunity to really experience yourself. But of course, if you want to say it's the galactic game, and we have to be careful with the words, but none of that begins until the person first gets out of duality. So duality is like a cage, and you could see it very clearly because it's so hard to break. See, anything that would have set itself up in our consciousness, it'd be very difficult to get rid of, would function like a cage in a sense, because when you try to break it, like a person tries to break duality, they can find themselves going in duality about how they're going to break duality. It's just like, it could become like a quantum issue. And so, of course, this is something anyway that needs to be practiced over time. But once you do it, or once you begin to do it, I'll say, because it's definitely a process. Like there's some that, we're a lot further along, but we still inherit it sometimes based on a situation. Like, I may go in the duality on the freeway if somebody just keeps cutting me off. It's just like, they tell you that you're not even supposed to be human. They say, oh, you're not supposed to do that. Namaste, brother. You're supposed to be in control of your attitude, but we're not robots. And so at every single moment, like, surfing the galaxy, like, there's going to be a different kind of essence every single day. And the truth is that when we gain it's kind of like a blueprint. to be able to know what we need to shift into. This is kind of what's important. One should be malleable, because you can look at history. Anything that stayed the same gets phased out and becomes extinct. When you begin to actually metamorphosize yourself and be more flexible to the changes and the adjustments, then you find yourself being able to survive the test of time, to collect more memories, because you would still have to add purpose to this. With everything, there must be purpose. So, what is the purpose of being in time? It's to collect memory as cells, to where energy can be stored. So let me explain that. So I have to break it down to computers. You have memory, and people are constantly trying to get more memory because now they have these bigger files. They have this high definition stuff that they're recording. So we flip-flop that over to the spectrum that it was really taken from, which is the ether, or the aether, and how the astral planes work. And that's when you get the hint of, time for us is memory, it's space. And it's space that gets filled. We fill it with these memories, we fill it with our experiences, we fill it. And even the term feel, like, hey, I feel you, I feel where you're coming from. That's tapped into the emotion, that's tapped into the senses. But at the same time, it's also a word explaining to fill up a vessel, to fill a vessel. I can't even find another word beside fill, because it's the easiest word to come out with to explain to you. It's your feelings and your memories that you're storing. And this time is what's giving you that. So the reason why I want to explain this first is that this will automatically begin to crush the dynamic that planets are necessarily, or anything external, is necessarily evil. Because if we start doing that, man, it's a hard road. I've been down it. But the reality is that it's really how you structure your weights and scales that are inside of you, your perceptions, right? And so these perceptions allow you to be able to find use in time, use in planets, use in anything in a tense, because that's what the cosmos is doing. And that's what I was trying to explain on the last show. I don't know if it was coming out as eloquently, but I was like, we should work to become the cosmos, not just a zodiac sign. We're actually in a zodiac sign now. We're in a house, individualized, pigeonholed, whatever, divided, fied, whatever. And when we work to become a cosmos, the easiest way to do that is say, so what does the cosmos think about it? And the truth is, the cosmos doesn't think. It's not limited. It's not limiting itself to such a rudimentary way of expression. So we know the cosmos is not thinking. So cosmos will have you in there with the uranium. Cosmos will have you in there with, whoever, because that's the whole thing with the cosmos. It can contain that. So that'll allow us to first, remember where we're at. We're actually inside of something. And so we're gestating. So we're actually in the egg. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We come to these conclusions just because when you reverse engineer them, there can be no other way. If we're inside of something and there's a hard shell on the outside, we're in an egg. Now, and the reason why there's a hard shell is anything as hard as anything can be. If I start taking you up, whether I'm using the tether, which is the elevator that's supposed to connect to the moon, or whether I'm using a rocket ship, if you're not pressurized, the force will tear you apart. Like if you try to dive below a certain feet, the force will tear you apart. That's the hard shell. That's the space between life and death. And when one gains the ability to go through that space, straight is the way. On one side, fire, and on the other side, deep water. Meaning that, you're like no drag when you go through these areas. You're pinpointing everything. You're focused. And a good friend of mine brought something up the other day about how, when we think of focused, we sometimes think of one point, but focus truly means everything together. Of course, she explained it a lot more eloquently, but focus meaning everything is together. And that gives us this different perspective to how things really are. And see, we put things together. When you take the power back, that's what sovereignty is. You're not seeing these shadows across time in different positions that they're in while they're having their experiences, meaning that when you're meeting a person, do you actually think that that's all of them? So that's also why we have to give respect, and not judging is the respect of realizing that you're still dealing with a being that crossed through time already too, just like you did. This is just the one that they're being now. And so when you then look at them like that, you're able to access something entirely different, because you're able to say, oh, well, we're together then. We're the same thing. It's like what they say, clear proofs of these truths, that man is created equal. Man and woman are created equal. See, those kind of principles are like the keys to getting into a more vast state of consciousness, if you really mean it. Now, unfortunately, there has already been a lot of factions that have come across core truths and have weaved those truths with their lies and their own ambitions, unfortunately. And it's most important for people to realize, once again, that anytime there, especially in the history of this planet, when there are wars, the reward of a war, look at the reward, okay, the booty of that is to take the signet, take the names, take the vibrations, take the symbols, and then change and inhabit those symbols. So that means that none of what we're looking at really was ever the same as when it was in the beginning and what it truly stood for. Whether it's anything you can draw, pyramids, words, tones, vibrations, none of that will be defined the same way. This is almost like a rumor in a sense. We tell a story at the beginning of the time, and then we come back 100,000, 200,000, or 1 parsec later. What's that story going to be? So I will definitely say that when we look externally, it'll probably be a lot of things. Everyone's going to have a different view of it. But our life experience is to tell that story to ourselves. And when you're a good storyteller to yourself, you can, because anything goes. That's what they were saying. It's really do what thou wilt. I'm not telling people to be Crowley, but the same do what thou wilt came from the same book that they took As Above, So Below out of. It wasn't their stuff. They just took the good parts and attached themselves to it. So do what thou wilt means live a magnificent life. Basically, become a legend. Do something so great in your life. It has nothing to do with darkness. Do something so great that the ripple of you goes across time like a mantra. It's like people are still chanting your name, not in worship of you, but of your creations. And then you would have had now achieved supreme state, like a supreme being. Because see, we're looking at, in most cases in physicality, and I don't want to start talking about the paradoxes, but we're looking at the created, because what lies behind it is the unmanifest. It can't actually be created. It's like the original thing. This is, in a sense, the shadow, if you may, be it very thick, the mist in mysticism. So the mist is created by the fire or the light. And in that sense, that's what brings you in full perspective to how the things that are going on around us and what we see are all expressions, right? And they know all expressions of one thing. And that's why if there's any judgment that you should make, it's to bring it all together, and then it clicks. So I'll say this, because now we can do away with the eloquence. I just want to say one more thing. So the thing is that like all we're trying to do here now, and I say try because it's still everyone's choice, is allow people to joy in something that we're already enjoying it. Like we've been enjoying this for like 6 years now. There is a whole nother stage. There's a whole nother level to go to. But it just so happens that you can't just tell people about that. See, that's what's so funny. In the beginning, you think even if you had this power to throw lightning across the room, that somehow when you did it in front of people or you told them you can do it, that would somehow change things. And that's just not how it works. How it works is the being has to experience it themselves. Yeah. And so we work to allow them to have that experience.
That's what I wanted just to underline. You've already said everything, but that's really important for people to get it, that the symbol, just take the peace sign, where some people say, hey, that's not how it was meant, was the other way around, Yeah, they meant it that way, and the other people took it, turned it around, and gave it a different vibration or the same or whichever. And it's now you coming on to understand it, looking at both and making it yours. That, yeah, I just wanted to put it in other words.
For sure. And you're absolutely right, because it's always going to have two sides. Now, and then sometimes where the challenge is to find the other side, because a lot of times the other side is obscure. So if any time when you see something, the other side to what's going on is obscure, that's just a reflection of how vast the mind is on that other side. And how that's kind of, which would be, if a person can't see the other side to something, that means that their other side per se is very minuscule. And there's actually a parable for this. It's a parable. It's not actually in the biblical text. It's in one of the books that were taken out. But the character we now know today as Abraham is with this angel for the day, and this angel shows the Abraham. Well, he's like, well, you stay here, and I got to go do this. And so Abraham's watching from afar off, and he's watching this angel do like terrible things. And at the end of this whole thing, he asked the angel, why did you do this? And when the angel begins to explain, basically the angel explains that there's other things that are actually going on, that when this person gets up the river, they're going to smash into this thing. And then once that happens, it's going to kill 100 and something people. So it's better to just take these two out. You see, so it's that kind of bureaucracy. But the reason why I brought that up as a metaphor is that also look at, if you had to be responsible for every single, this is like ultra micromanaging. Like if someone's going the wrong way, you know how a lot of people say that they're guided. They have these guardian angels. They've almost died before. And then when they die, there's something happens in it, and they make it out of the disaster, right? So the truth is that it's us. We're the guardian angels. And there's several of us, meaning there's several of, I can speak for myself, there's several of me. Because every time there's a time loop, every time there's a complete circle around time, another one is created. That's what the circle means. It is complete. So each time one is created, these are like James 1.0, James 2.0, James 3.0. And the reason why we do this is because the only thing we have access to, because we're talking real talk here. This is a record. It's a magnetic disc that when you vibrate it with tones, your frequency, your wave, what has been crystallized on that magnet plays. That's how tapes work. Okay? So it's all of this stuff that we're seeing around us. A lot of people are now sneering at the technology. And it's just, once again, can you see the other side of it? It's just showing you the parallels, because nothing's new here. There's no such thing as technology in the traditional sense as something from the future. It's about understanding, since it's in front of us, what exactly is this, and how does it work, and do we work the same way? So again, every time you go around one of those circuits of yourself, obviously there's always points to where you do things that alter your path. So when you have a 1.0, at the termination point, 1.0 and coming back in time is going to decide where were those points that things should be changed. And this kind of gets you into why they say, oh yeah, there's another planet with other people living on it, but had they made another decision? Like every time another decision is made, another planet pops up. And the people who say that probably got it from somewhere else, because they don't even understand what it actually means, because they never finish explaining it. The truth is, first of all, that does not apply to a whole. You're geocentric, so you can eliminate all other people out of the statement. So when you eliminate everyone else out of the statement, and then you say with yourself that you've been coming back over and over again, doing things with yourself, now it starts making kind of more sense. Because what you have access to when you're making these circuits is you have access to your timeline. That's your lot. That's what belongs to you. So as a being who lives a continuum, we have to put the microphone in somebody's mouth, that supposedly believes in all this stuff. Are you immortal? Will we live forever? That person will say, yes, because we're souls. We live forever. It's a real thing. Only until you actually see it, though, and experience it, can a person even know what I'm talking about. So once you confirm that we'll live forever, the next conclusion to that, the next thought is that Well, we have this cutoff point that we call death, and then it starts over again. And then we're reborn, right? And this reborn thing is synonymous with when one is complete, then a new one starts again. But the one that's complete is still running. You see, that we call that time. So it's that one that's complete is still running through time, while one is actually that's unbegotten is outside of time. This is the baby that when it's about to come into the incarnations. And so then, remember, all the stuff that we do that's the most complex, including breathing, does it all automatically. So if some people are trying to figure out, well, how are they even doing all this and how can they do it? They're burning their brain up. It's way above the mind. We do this stuff automatically. Only the most powerful ones that can control their mind can take this system off autopilot and try to control it. And that's for a good reason, if someone's looking for the bad or good in that. Because if you left people off autopilot, it would be like they had no parenting phase, and they would, probably terminate rather fast before they kept coming in, terminating again. You need some kind of guides to this. So that's also what this whole thing is that we are guides to ourselves. And then these guides are actually, like they say, guidelines. What are the guidelines? Well, the guidelines are like those lines you see on a record to when you're about to play the next song. You can see this hard line, and then you know that that's the beginning of the song. So also, when you're looking at the layers, people do this in the studio all the time. You don't have to actually listen to the track to know where everything is going on, because the waves tell you everything. So this is the same thing with us. All the experiences we have in life, they're just waves. So we can look at the waves and know everything that's going on. So when we see that spiked wave, that means something loud is going on. And anyone in some editing software will know when they see that peak, they know they either need to work with that or, that's something that happened, the door slammed, something like that. So we go to the peak. Then what we do is when we go to the peak, now for the soul, it knows that the peak is when the decisions were made that alters things. We're not saying good or bad. We're just saying there's an alter, because the only thing that the soul is looking for is probabilities. Like, how can I change the overall outcome of James 7.5 so that way when James 7.6 comes through, we don't have, this kind of situation going on. You see? So again, this is your lot. This is what you have access to. Other people's stuff, to get access to that, it's a whole nother dynamic that I just suggest people don't try to get involved in. Worried about yourself, and you'll be more than fine. But to get into some more practical things now, because, I think that was a beautiful presentation for the connoisseur. But for those who are just coming into this, again, we can come back to the basics of just your mind, body, and soul. And understanding that if a person is just beginning in something, this means they're actually at the base of the pyramid, okay? And this place is synonymous with the mass. It's synonymous with black. It's synonymous with Saturn, because what it is the accumulation of everything. That's what actually creates black. Like when you work with alchemy, when you work with color pigments, you mix all the colors together, then you finally get like this black, right? So black is a mixture of everything. And so that's the prima materia, because you need everything to start shaving it off to figure out, what it is that what you want to purify out of that. So you start with something that's fully mineralized, like this shilajit is dark, dark brown because it's fully mineralized. So the reason why I'm explaining it like this is that, so if we're right off seeing, well, I'm just beginning in this, am I going to do mind? Am I going to do body? Am I going to do soul? We just kind of start a game, like the beginning of the game. It's mind. Do you take the path of the mind? Do you take the path of the body? Do you take the path of the soul? And for most, it's going to be the path of the body, because that's what corresponds to the base pillar. So until the person really works with their consumption, what you're taking into the vessel, then it's always going to be difficult to meditate. It's always going to be difficult to read. All the mental stuff and spiritual stuff, that's higher aether, if you may. It's more soluble. So it's much more difficult to convince the body that's already destroyed, basically, to go into something spiritual and to fully be able to comprehend it. Because if they're just nodding their head, yeah, I understand it, or yeah, I like it, this is entertaining, let me roll up a joint to it and sit down, that's all still body. That's all still monkey mind. It's still, found just something else to get its kicks off of. When the person really wants to do the work, the way they can slam into this and have the most impact is to hit the body. And the reason is because the body, because it moves the slowest, it accumulates. Because if you could see, everything is really a particle for real. A lot of people like, when they say that statement that everything is, really porous and that, you can really walk through it. The case is that how it works is that if you're on an atomic level, you can see in an atomic level most of the time when you get into these either high levels of the meditation or sometimes using catalysts. This is when you start to look at something and then it starts to pixelate. And we're talking about before all the geometry starts, but right in between that period, at a certain period, it starts to pixelate. And that pixelation is actually you seeing down to the atomic scale. And if you go one level below that, that's when you can actually see what the DNA looks like. So what we're doing, though, is we're notating that on these levels, So let me just bring it home here, because I did kind of lose my train of thought for a second. But I went to the atomic level, and I was that's what kind of happens sometimes I get on these shows. And I have to visualize exactly what I'm talking about, and sometimes I get into spaces and there's just nothing there, and so my mind goes blank. But anyway, so what I'm saying is that what a person should do is they should go at their body from the level of its flesh, because that's going to be the level that they have the most impact on. And when we, so this is what I was talking about. That's why it's just such a difficult concept to explain, but it's very valuable and potent for the person who understands it. It's like a filter, okay? So when you become as dense as the physical body, you're like stuck in a filter. Some people call it a web, but it's more like a screen, okay? And it's because that now that you're this big, and you're thinking you're in this consciousness that's this big, you have this space basically between the level of the ground, a little bit deeper, and then in the sky. That's like your playroom. That's like your spectrum. So you can go quite a few levels down. You can even go atomic. And then when you become atomic, now your vision in an atomic level, everything is just orbs. Everything is just light. Everything is just signatures. But in making that process, because you can, I've seen the body go through this complete experience, you actually see the elements change based on you changing. And so for the person, so what this this is all about, it's so difficult to explain, but what this is all about is just explaining to the person the reason why you're in this state of consciousness is because the physical body is very dense. So the moment that you start to, chip at it and raise its frequency, then you stop seeing the dense part of everything. This is just basically like the ignorant part of everything. You're not able to interpret anything. And you can see a few more levels down. And this seeing it's not just a visual thing. It's synonymous with how your life starts to change. Because life is really seeing. Life is really experiencing. This is the number one faculty connected to life in many tenses is the eye, because it gives the experience, right? But it's a sensory device or a sensory peripheral, whatever. So the body first, and you can hit the body like we talk about in the Innerversity. If you're trying to pull yourself out of a vortex, meaning that everything that you've tried in the past doesn't work, it's almost like you're on the slippery slope. You even can admit to yourself that this lifestyle that you're living and carrying on with is going to cause some more problems, because obviously it's caused some problems. But you just can't get that break. This is like a ship that's in a tailspin. Rather large craft, because the person has not learned how not to deal with high levels of density. So they generally get the largest craft they can. Most of the stuff, a lot of stuff accumulates on them. That was the finish of my of what I was explaining when I did forget what I was going to say. But what I was saying was that when you're dense, the space dust accumulates on you. So we're already going through this thing that's all particles. And the more stuff that gets stuck on your screen, the heavier you are. It's like you become like things attached to you like barnacles. It's all the same concept. It's barnacles on the ship. And then once you get too many of those, then your hull can crack. And this is basically when one of the organs start to give out because they're leaking fluid into another area. This is the same thing as in a jet engine. If you got cooling fluid going right into the motor, diluting the oil. You see what I mean? None of this stuff is different, I swear. And nothing that they created was different than how we work. It wouldn't work. And that's why we know the term, never reinvent the wheel, never reinvent pi, never reinvent the pentagram in a tense is what's being said, except for the curve. This is a pentagram with curved lines, as we always have to deliver the disclaimer. But that term, don't reinvent the wheel, comes from the deepest societies. And what they're saying is you can't reinvent the cosmos. You're not going to change anything about the cosmos, but you best believe that you don't even really understand most of how it works. And that's also why that symbol became synonymous with trying to figure out the depth of what goes on in the universe. So, just to finish off what I was saying earlier, so if you're accumulating all these particles, it's going to eventually weigh you down, and we call that aging. When it weighs you down to the point where your hull cracks, we call that death. So to get out of the vortex, if you're crashing through, then you drop weight. This is always what we do in ships. The first thing the captain says is, let's eject, the cargo, whatever we need to eject to pull out of this.
Yeah.
Right? So what that is basically that's the karma and dharma. Like if you could look at the HUD on the craft, which is the dashboard, and you could see the fuel of the of the tank, one side would say dharma and the other side would say karma. And this basically means you dump all flesh, as much flesh as possible. So this is like car is the word carnivore, and in many languages, this, it'll tell you over and over it means flesh. So you have to dump flesh. This means the first thing, if you can actually stop eating flesh, you're already on your way to winning. But if you can stop fleshly things, and then we kind of go to the biblical text is kind of like the best at telling you a list of fleshly things. The more of those that you can eliminate, then it will lighten the load and lighten the ship. So what happens is that, these are the first ways to attack body. Me personally, it's as simple as food. You don't got to go into dogma. Like dogma, you may never make it back. You may put yourself into a straitjacket. So it's really about the intakes. So what's coming through the ears, what's coming through the nose, what's being seen by the eyes, and what's going on with what's coming into the mouth. Because that's prime global. The head is the only part of the body that is solar. Even though there's a solar plexus, you have to look at the head. That's where all the pineal, that's where all this is, because that's the globe. Now, there's another sun. They even tell you Saturn was a sun. That's probably the solar plexus. You see what I mean? I'm not going to get into the dynamics of it now, just so people understand. There's a lot of planets were already suns. And also, you can't even try to cross it over to the planetary systems that we're using all the time. But just so you understand, your head is the Promethean. It was the fire. And it reigns over the body. And then all the attachments are the animals. They're the zodiac. So the head is the sun. The body is the rest of the cosmos. And for us, we wanted to simplify it a lot more. So arms became Mars. The torso became the Taurus. The legs became it's a particular constellation. I think it's Ophiuchus, which is the double serpent. The two that are, the yin and the yang. The one goes before the other, but it makes force. So that's how the body was set up. And so when you guard the globe, because everything about the solar system is still based on the sun. This is solar anatomy. So when you guard the globe, that's how you begin to actually take control over the body again. And that's also when the person does that, they synonymously raise themselves, generally from the coccyx all the way back into their crown, which means now you become king. See, the coccyx, or queen, or which actually is the same word. So the coccyx is the low point. That's where you're even lower than the gonads of the body. This means you're actually still lower than your passions. The passions, of course, being synonymous with flesh. So then when you reign back over your passions, and this just means that you start regulating them. This doesn't mean you stop them. a lot of people confuse that. Passion is a very powerful fuel. It goes along with desire. If you don't have any passion and desire, have you ever seen a person like that? Not fun to be around. So this is not in the tense to try to eliminate this stuff. It's about balancing it out and getting it under control and figuring out how to use it for your favor. And so when you do that, then you rise into the top of the body. And then that's when you go at the mind. So this is literally a war. Like, I make no mistake. Some people think that this is a slide down a hill, and the slip and slide with water and everything. And we're going to laugh on the way down, but this is not one of those things. It's Mount Meru. This is Everest. This is Ubermensch. You will march to the north until you overcome, and it will get cold, and you will be alone. But in that, you will find everything. And that's how it is. And some people, they will wait till they make their journey. And that should be okay with you. It's like trying to rush everyone to climb a mountain right away. So it should be okay with us that others are choosing to stay in on the bottom of the base pillar for a little bit longer before they make their climb. But rest assured, every being will make the climb. And so some of us, though, as we said now, like now we're getting so far ahead, the telepathic level is opening up fully. We're feeling like, man, my body feels like a washing machine when I go to sleep at night. There's just currents moving all over the place, and I don't even ask anymore what's going on, because it used to be,
Yeah. But then you listen to that for a little bit, and then you forget about it for a second, and then all of a sudden it drops. and you almost wake up from that, and the washing machine like stops, and you're like, pew! You're like, okay, zero space, and now I can go to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, in the strictest sense, so much going on that the question, how it was put to me was, you just stop trying to figure it out, and instead of trying to figure it out, do something with it. There's actually a difference, And I started to think about it. I was like, yeah, there is kind of a difference between trying to figure out why something is happening versus just right away trying to figure out what to do with it and how to use it. Because, of course, if it's even above a certain wavelength, you're not going to be able to interpret it anyway. And this is kind of an interesting thing to bring up, but it's true that there are mental boundaries. And so if something is going on that is beyond the mental level of comprehension, the only way that you're fully going to understand it is to go deeper and stiller inside of self and to really, really tap into it using at least the imagination, but definitely not English. And so, but this is also, the reason why I feel like, especially, these interviews that we have, and when I do have the pleasure of coming on to this show, the stuff that we talked about, like even if I just stop right now, especially before I disintegrate the whole idea into something that I try to explain that I may not be able to get out so well, it's a vital key that person, and I've never met a person that was, when they were really trying to get the message, that they didn't get it. So that it wasn't available to them. It didn't come out of somewhere. And that's what we're doing with this. These are the seeds that are really what others that are beginning to expand their consciousness, they find those seeds. They're like magic beings, more or less. And then when they hear this, it's like, you're right. Because that's what I already know. But it's great to hear someone say it. Why? Because it pings. It's like it hits someone else. I can always think, like, I've read some stuff even about my name and my birthday and then the family's name and then all this stuff, and then it just kind of hits you, like, even for the rest of the day you may be walking around with your chest out a little bit because you're like, yeah, I'm a part of something. But the next day can come around and it fades away a little bit more. But just in the strictest tense, if we ping all the time, if we're always bouncing our energy off of things that reflect it, maybe even amplify it, then that's how we generate. That's the real generator, right? And we've all had those experiences when you're around people that are really positive, or you're doing something that you really like to do, and everyone's doing that same thing. The energy can really get pretty high in there, and then it's just a whole different feeling. Time is not of essence. Food, you definitely don't want it. It's like you don't want it to be over. Somebody says, you want to eat? No, I don't need to eat. I'm good. And it's just you're living on pure energy. And some think that that's not being superhuman. But in every tense, that's it. That's the superhuman. It's wholly existing on its own energy. And so, yeah, so that's what's up, It's just, so we covered the flesh. And then obviously this, because again, we talked about, it's a climb up a hill. So this means that's why they drew the body, like, especially in the Eastern traditions, they always had someone waiting in the chakra. And then they did this for a reason. Like, of course, you see the charts, and then there's like a picture of someone there. They either two lovers or some creature with fangs or whatever. And this is because they're saying, on this climb up your body back to the head. So let's let people see it. You see the pyramid on the top is the eye. The eye is supposed to be the sun. So on the body, the bottom of the feet or the base pillar, which is again known as Saturn. And then there's an ascent all the way to the crown of the body or the top of the body, but it's an uphill. In each level or each spectrum, there's something different to deal with. You were challenged at one point to be courageous. Then after you run through that entire spectrum and gain that ability, the next thing is, can you be compassionate? Which is opposite. It's like the person, the courageous, they're valiant when they graduate. So the compassion is still needing to be, they don't mainly have compassion because it's just like they're just so valiant. They're just chopping through everything, their heads off. So their next challenge was to be compassionate. They'll get switched. And to me, that's why the universe is university, because they're like, and I've had this experience in my life where I've went on this whole quest for a year doing what the cosmos wanted me to do. And then when I got switched into another location, I thought that I would be doing the same thing. And it was so non-responsive. I broke down the first day and I said, why would I even be here if all these people don't want it? And it's, you thought that every time you're sent to do something, it's going to be the same thing. No, of course not. We don't do the same thing. This is about something different. And, you have this conversation with yourself, or the oversoul has this conversation with you, that this is about something different because you already learned that already. Like, what's the need of continuously teaching you how to, raise people's vibration and really allow them to perform the miracle, let's say. Now, this is about you just staying steadfast in another scenario where you're going to need to experience a little bit more of what the underworld is about. So you'll have a little bit more compassion next time when you're looking at someone in this situation and not just judge them immediately because you haven't gone through what they've gone through. Because, some people say, I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly what you feel. But truly, if they haven't been through what you've been through, that's impossible. So even if they mean well, they're still lying. So this is, many of us have gone through this. Or also remember, it's easy to simulate. Like, think about how many things you go through in the dream. You get that whole experience and then you're back up the next day. Sometimes you even feel tired from it. Your mind has changed from what you've seen, but you've gotten that experience and now you're continuing to move. So this is what this requires of us. They call it the talents, where much is given, much is required. People have heard that before, but it's a real thing. The more of your being that you begin to experience, the more, let's say, tentacles that you have into the experience of life. And all these tentacles are basically, to me, I don't think even tentacles is a good word. It's really more of that you become a parent in all of those areas. So everything that you've reached into needs the nurturing because your rays have created something, right? So that's what it is. So as solar beings, when you move back up into your crown and then you begin to create, then you spray out all this light. Those lights are seeds. They bury themselves into others' consciousness and any place that is soft enough, basically, and that is fertile enough. It buries in there, and then you service that still. It's probably, if we sat back and watched it, how much we truly service, meaning like how many things are really connected to us, like people that you don't even know are thinking about you, have a connection with you. And the thing is that nothing in this world is mysterious. And what I mean by that is that behind it all, there's an actual function to it. So even when a person thinks about you, either way, there's a slight, even if it's as thin as the web on a spider, rope, if you may, or tube that comes from that person to you. And when you're hyper aware, you can service those tubes. It's kind of like watching an octopus, trying to answer telephones, right? You can service all of these different levels of energy that are coming to you, but not in a way that they're individual. Because the person that thinks that they're all individual, they get worn out fast. It's just like, oh, it's too much going on. Everyone wants my energy. No, energy is energy. It's all the same thing. So it's actually only one source that it's coming from. This is how you work. This is like celestial mechanics, soul dynamics, how you really get the Prius version of a soul installed in yourself. Meaning some people burn a lot of spiritual energy because they maybe not understand completely what's going on, or they're in one specific perspective. But the true perspective is everything can be connected to you, and you can more than handle it. Your yoke is easy, your burden's light. But that's, of course, when judging stops and you just start giving energy. Like some people say, well, what do you think of when you go into meditation? I don't actually think. I just build energy, because my energy will then translate into all the stuff that I don't even need to think about, because there's just so many different details to it. I just need the energy, you see. So this is just pointers. Like as we go on this, some people they tweak their systems all the time. We've done it all the time. Like one moment we believe something and there was something more optimal to believe, burn less energy, got us involved with less silliness. So it's been fully optimized, and then we use that and we see the benefits from that. So that's what this is about. Like what I'm doing now is like, and even people will be kind of upset when you talk about getting out of duality. They almost feel like you betrayed them, right? So it's just they're still in the stage of wanting to duel with everything. It's like now they're going to duel with you. And this is also even what I felt was a necessary repercussion to being a teacher, is that when you're still in that whole, when you're teaching, the person needs to learn something. So they're actually coming to you saying they need help. So make no mistake, there will be a period within there that they perceive you to be their enemy. If it didn't happen, something's going wrong. And see, that's what the teacher should always prepare themselves for, versus the teacher who thinks that they're just going to, be loved and get apples every day. That's just not how it works. Is this one who wants to become free, wants to become sovereign, also wants to even do that from you. So this is why we always design the message to be wholly dependent on the person, not me. It's the mission, not the man. And you make the mission, or the person even, in more tense, the centralized character, and in that way you don't get the blowback of, when they're going through that phase of themselves where it's now you that they need to come in conflict with to get free of, so that they can prove to themselves that they really did develop all of these ideas. So this is this is the process. we would have to write, great works on it. Because even if it's just a work in progress, why wouldn't we record it? Like, why wouldn't we think it's of value? Like, this is, to me, our experiences now are of the greatest value, at least to us. And that's all we're looking at here. Also, we should all be aware of at all times, I see you forever. So it's the same thing on the shirt. I really mean that. I cross across the continuum. I will coast over the event horizon, and everyone that I knew now, I will know forever. And that's just how it works, because this is still, this belongs to us. And if it belongs to us, it belongs to you. That's what us really is. It's like, you have yours, I have mine, we all have ours. It belongs to us. So that's why I'm always looking to get into more closer relationships, relationships that are full of real connection, and also to progress with the overall mission, which is to see our entire biorhythm raise itself beyond this, since we can conceive it now. And as I spoke on my last interview, I believe that when a world does that, that's what kind of stops a timeline. It's like our timeline runs until we figure out there's no time, and somewhat of a 100th monkey chain reaction takes place within our DNA, because someone's tapped into the light code, and then it's just spreading like a positive version of anything that's replicating, a balanced version of something replicating, because it's a dominant. So dominance, just like, see, a virus is also a dominant. So if you introduce a virus into the system, it tries to dominate and take over all the cells. because it's just a more dominant frequency. It's more pronounced. So the same thing can happen with the harmonic frequency. You send it through, it's dominant, and then it starts to replicate itself. And then it breaks through. Now, notice how there's the immune system, but the immune system is also synonymous with the things that stop change. So if a harmonic can breach the immune system of duality, I'll say that again. If a harmonic can breach the dual system, the system of duality, the virus, that's what the greatest spiritual, physical, mental, innovative seekers are doing right now. That's our collective idea here. You know, if I just have to refresh somebody's memory on it, the collective idea here is no one gets left behind. We did kind of chill on that for a minute because it seemed to over annoy people because they just couldn't believe it. Meaning that if you tell anyone we'll take the entire world to a new level, that gets a little annoying for them because that seems just so far off. It's not realistic. Until you come back around and then you empower them. Because remember, when you say I'll take the whole world to the level, that actually means that those other people will need to get to another level. It doesn't mean that we're going to fly everyone in a ship to another planet that's clean and say none of that even makes any sense. It means that we will show people how to activate themselves. That's all this means. And so with that, also the mission doesn't seem as crazy and far-fetched because we have methods, we have nature, we have all this to begin to make this process happen. But this is what we're doing. Like, this is what the connecting is really about. This is what these messages are really about. What you're doing, what I'm doing. And then it trains us in a sense. We get skilled with how to do it. And now, to me, it seems that everyone is connecting more. And there's, of course, definitely a lot more people who are getting into this now. Consciousness has trended and it's not going anywhere. This is not bell bottoms. It won't be. Spirit's not like that. Once you start dealing with Kundalini, Kundalini doesn't stop. It's rather interesting. Like in my memoirs of Kundalini, once you engage Kundalini, Kundalini is like super excited about it. And then on top of that, everybody, when they turn on Kundalini, it's a baby first. Everyone has their own Kundalini. You know, there's a lot of different misconceptions that Kundalini is like a world energy, and true enough, it is. But just like our souls are a world energy, but we all have our soul. So Kundalini operates the same way. So how you grow your Kundalini and what you show your Kundalini, which is what we're all doing now, that's going to be when the Kundalini gets grown, which is what you start feeling in your body when it's a washing machine at night. When the Kundalini is growing up, it's taking the suggestions from you, but it's just a being that has so much power. You know, so the whole thing, you know, it's just what makes the story dull at times is what we cannot see with the two eyes. But when we close the eyes and we just sense them and we merge everything, then we find that experience there. But truly, everything that ever was powerful in most cases generally remains invisible, like our breath. We know it's there, but we can't see it. But for somebody to say we don't have it, that just doesn't make any sense. If I just sit here and blow up a balloon, or if you try to hold your breath and you don't breathe it, you're going to sit there and die. So this is where we right off the bat exclude, we say right then, okay, that means that there are invisible, powerful things. They don't necessarily have to be Santa Claus sitting in the sky judging everyone. But in every tense, it's the essences and the energies that we're dealing with. And when we start learning how to be blind then, right? Because when a person's blind, they turn on other abilities, and those other abilities are stronger, right? Blind people have stronger sight. Stronger sight, because they use the real faculty to see with. You know, the seeing comes from the nose area. It's actually sensing. That's why dogs they know when you're coming miles away, because they're using the area by their nose to do what it's supposed to do, which is sense, right? And then also when you go use any martial art, and I'll conclude, but when you do any martial art, they blindfold you. So that way you can enhance your technique, right?
Yeah, exactly. I really see that picture in my head, that light in the head, you know, that you were talking about, the eye when you have your eyes closed, shining through the body and being able to shine through and open these locks, these wheels, these chakras, these blockages, you know, and shine all the way through. And then you know, then you're the light body, and then that flesh is removed from your understanding of it, and it's really beautiful. And when you said aging, blockage, that word age is in there as well.
Yeah.
You're being the lock that makes you age,
Yeah.
and not opening the wheel. It's
Yeah.
that comes together pretty. Mhm.
Yeah, that does come together real pretty because, yeah, it's like the lights from that crown, because you can even see them. Obviously, when you get into the state, you close your eyes, you can start seeing the lights, and that's true. It sprays down into the body, even into the darkest corners, and then that's almost like a solar power in a sense. It starts the wheel turning, like just one of those old mechanical devices, and then as those locks break, because there's definitely the knowledge that the chakras are actually locked in a certain position, and it's just like they need a little bit of oil, a little bit of grease, and that's the kundalini. And that's the anointing, if you may, because obviously whoever comes
Yeah.
out of the anointing comes out with all the the abilities.
Right. Maybe also when people say, locking the knowledge, maybe it's not, maybe it's lock picking, opening that lock. That's how you set the knowledge free. Because you said before, when you concentrate on it, when you wait for it, when you, think that you have that knowledge and you're the one, then it doesn't work. Then you're actually just collecting more dust, space dust on there. Yeah.
Yeah, and well, then there's energy management, because obviously we're still walking up a ladder, so you can't get to the end before you go to the beginning. In the techniques, what they call the anus lock, the sex lock, and the neck lock. The purpose of these locks, which kind of to give more credit to what we're even talking about, is when you only can still generate so much energy, because it's like baby kundalini. You can root lock, and that will allow the energy to actually stay in that area, because it's still baby kundalini. And then through that root lock, many of the other chakras have an opportunity to develop, versus the person who has no lock in a tense. This means they have generally it's just the sphincter is really loose. The energy just goes out all the time. It never actually holds. And so we see there's just a use in both of them. It's like the technique, how the Bruce Lee would be in there with the technique on you. And it's like, and then also once that person grows the kundalini more, and it now fills up this intersection of the body, the torus, now they need to also get very familiar with the neck lock, because when kundalini gets into the brain, it's almost like, I can just say it like this. Some experiences that you go into, you kind of intend to get to a certain space and just kind of never get there, because you're either thinking too much, or most of the time thinking too much. So the neck lock prevents thought, allowing the kundalini to actually accumulate within the center or the torus area of the person's body. And then when they release the lock, it then pushes up, like almost like you're holding back water. It sprays up and has enough force to go around, which then allows the cycling to take place. And if that happens, then there's very little thoughts. There's just only that feeling, and some call that bliss, or, it's got different terms, but atma, but it's like a total awareness of one is everything. And then that's meant the circuit was complete. But if there's just a lot of thinking and there's no awareness, the awareness doesn't kick in that one is everything, that means that the kundalini hasn't gone through the complete cycle. And so it's interesting because, again, like if we put it into just mechanics, if the energy doesn't get to certain areas in the body, and we're talking about prana, then those bodies lock, those parts of the body lock up. And we have much more of those parts than we think. Like we only kind of consider the organs, but there's also all these glands, right? The ductless glands. And there's a lot of things. There's the diaphragm. I mean, look at the body. There's all sorts of things going on. And how much nourishment, and that's why I think that there's also this simultaneous adventure that goes on with the person who's interested in this kind of thing, where they walk through generally first the plant kingdom, and then to the mineral kingdom, and then to the kingdoms of ether. But if you notice, most people are still on the animal kingdom. That's why they consume the animal, right? So let's watch it. So they consume the animal, and then when they get tired of doing that, and they've inherited everything they can from that, which is they generally are they have a lot of strength generally. They have a lot of will, but they don't have the ability to manifest the will, because that's more of the vegetable thing. And then so you have some people that tap into the vegetables next. They start inheriting the chlorophyll, which is the solar energy, and then they start progressing through that. they even start maybe the ayahuasca or something like that, like a bioelectric. And then at some point, if they're still climbing the ladder, they hit the metals. They start getting into the crystals really heavy. They start being able to feel the crystal and that there's actually, it's not just a rock. And then they have that whole experience. And then if they may even go into alchemy where, you know, they administer minerals to themselves because obviously the body does need minerals. And then as they progress from there, then it's ether, and those people, and some of us are doing this always simultaneously, but just in different measures, right? So this is not necessarily one that you go through this one, two, three, four. Humans are simultaneous, so they tend to push the lever up on all of them, but at different strengths, right? And so you have some, though, that they just deal with spirit, and they really just get into the spirit. There's not much more to add to it. It becomes their whole substance, right? And so, but those are the different things you can ingest. And I've learned over time, though, that you do need all of them. And so to clarify that, you know, especially in relation to animals, that I am seeing that when the body reaches like 35, 36 in this age range, depending on different individuals and blood types and things like that, they may need to administer to themselves not the meat, but the beastings, which are actually what comes from the cow, like the colostrum in pure colostrum, pure whey. Because if you really think about it, first of all, the cow has a very significant role in our history, right? Which kind of also brings more to why would you want to actually eat our friend, seeing that it can produce this milk, and it can also, you know, it produces the milk. And then that milk, because, you know, women have milk, it's something very, very deep within that. Even the foam of the ocean is synonymous with the milk. And what I found is that the body can deteriorate rather rapidly if it doesn't have colostrum and whey. But if you're thinking that this stuff is the same as what you would just buy in the store, that's not how you have to get it. I think there's a company called Bulletproof. And what you'll notice is even about this way, there's no lactose and there's no, it's no lactose and it has a low acidic content. Like basically when you see the profile on this, and because these are just animals that are eating the grass and that's it. And they're not going to be killed. They're only used for the colostrum and to produce the beastings, which is basically the consistency of the breast milk. So this is the connection with a lot of our strength, is what I'm saying. And so we keep that from that kingdom. Same thing with the vegetables. Some may find that after a while, you know, even from a conscious level, it doesn't kind of make sense. I had this, meaning from a conscious level, it doesn't kind of make sense to not rope vegetables in the same kingdom as the animal kingdom. If we're just talking about you shouldn't eat animals because they're living. Because that just kind of sounds silly, right? Like if I say you shouldn't eat animals because they're living, then that would be like saying because I eat vegetables and they're not living. So it doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we have to we have to start clarifying this. And trust me, you know, it's been a rough road because of course nobody is just going to come right out and say certain things. And, you know, you have to learn this on your own. You have to see your body completely break down. And then, you know, I've been into physical fitness all my life. So you're going to want to know how to build it back up. And so I went the whole gambit. I've been the raw vegan. I've been the whole nine. And then when I just noticed, though, after a while, when I just started thinking about it rather than taking other people's suggestions, is that the body...
Sevan, just real quick, my recorder crashed, and I think you were recording, right?
Yeah, for sure. I got a
awesome.
Nice clear one going on.
I wanted to chime in anyways about that. Yeah, what you're eating vegetables and those aren't living, and even, you know, minerals, if you ever want to go that, right. Okay, it's not considered a living being, but it has energies as we established. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
And
because of course it's living, and that's what I was talking about in the last show. I didn't get a chance to share it here, but, you know, I'll share it now. It's a very brief concept, but I mean, again, we've gotten now into this impression that everything that's living has to think, and that just makes no sense either when you really think about it. And it's because in the highest state of our consciousness, We don't think. Like the deepest meditation that you can ever get into will be when you don't think. It actually will, it's the door to Zen. So every person that's ever practiced meditating, that's like meditation 101. You're trying not to think. And in some point when you stop thinking long enough, it all opens up for you, however long it takes. So this shows us that you actually don't need to think to be hypersentient. So if we can then conclude that, oh, these metals are not thinking, that means they must already be in the hypersentient zone. And that's why they call them nobles, because they're already in this space to where they know who they are. Is you still trying to figure out, right? Because they're in the whole collective on an atomic level, and so close to that atomic level. Like we're filled with all of these elements. We have at least 24 of them running through us at any given time. Why? They're just one of them. So they're actually closer to that total realization. And then, of course, when you tap into that, great dynamic things happen, from communication with them, malleability with them, meaning being able to transform them at will, the will of your mind. And so this is the gate into that arena. And it's kind of similar to what we talked about earlier, but it's actually realizing the sentience within everything by not judging something as non-sentient based on principles that it's not speaking English and it's not thinking, when we can confirm that actually speaking English and thinking allows you not to get into the depth of the meditation at all, right? So this is, again, the reverse engineering. So my whole, as you know, for the last 7 years now, or yeah, it's about that. What I've been doing is I just base all my stuff off facts. I don't have to really go too far out there, but truth is stranger than fiction. Like that's not a lie at all. And one of the major factors to that is that once you feel it or experience it, it's just mind blowing. Like I've seen some come out of sessions even, and they want to tell the world, because they just feel like if the world knows that, then everything is going to be different. But this is, again, another misconception. Yeah. It's like just because we experience something, it doesn't mean that when we tell it to another person that means that everything's going to change for them. They want to experience it too before they can make that decision. So it takes the bravery. Like, if anything, we can really commend each other on the amount of bravery, like we are going through this with. Like, some people think bravery is just running your sword through your brother or something, but the truth is bravery is being able to speak even when it's against where everything is going. And the bravery is to walk away from where the crowd is or the hive is if you don't feel like it's right. This is true courage. I mean, in the real scope of things, because that's what's going to allow you to make the progress, in the direction that you want to go, versus all those other actions are going to pull you deeper into negative things, So this is how, this should go. These are like mantras. Like, this should go through the mind all the time. And if you're going to use the mind, and then it can be rather useful because it does have a direct plug-in, if you may. It's like one dimension over. So it has a direct plug-in with this reality. So when you can get it playing the symphony and rolling the wheel and balancing everything, because if everything is out of balance, or if things are out of balance, this sounds like something playing out of key. So nobody wants to listen to that kind of orchestra. When we find balance with everything that's going on around us, then that's beautiful music. And in that beautiful music, that's where we obtain health. That's where we attract other things, right? Because, I'll just say that alone. You attract things. Because when you're playing beautiful music, they always show the beautiful woman singing, and then all the animals start coming around, and they kind of sit there, and, they lay on their backs and all this kind of stuff, because that harmony or that tone is pleasing. So we emit these tones all the time. So the true secret is that it's not so much as what you're saying. It's just inside, do you really believe we're all the same? And how many does that exclude? Or what species that you can think of that you've really probably never seen, except for in one of these Spielberg movies or something that they've put into your imagination? But how many things are you going to create that you're different than? And that, of course, just increases the amount of time. So you would only imagine that some people are choosing to actually find things that they don't get along with just to increase their time. That's, it's just it's the cause and effect of the whole thing. It's just mechanics, man. And that's why sometimes it's like sitting in with astronauts, and you're just going over the schematics one more time about projection. But how many people are in the space shuttle most of the time? It's like 6 people up there, 4 people up there. You don't put all the world in the space shuttle. Some people are scared of heights. So this is what it is. It's a choice. You choose. And that's where we got it now. We just want to make sure that when people do choose to get on themselves, that it's available. See, that's to me, that's the mission. Because before, especially when I woke up, there wasn't much really going on out there. It was not nowhere near as much as it is now. There was a bunch of people who were acting like they knew. Most of them were vainly reciting, meaning just reciting things they heard from other people. Now, we're so creative. We do use all of our stuff because it's not somebody's. We do use each other's stuff because we're all a part of the same being. But we also put our own spin on it, just as sure as that spin that's on your fingerprint that they tell you it is really different. I've checked them out. That's your spin. And just because of that, that's the whole glory of us all being together, because everybody's got their own spin. And so at the end of the day, I'm going to be looking for the uniqueness in a sense. I'm going to love the uniqueness. And that's how the cosmos feels. And so instead of being like, I just don't want to be I just want to be in a system that I feel powerless in. I'm not going to put myself in that kind of space. So that means I need to learn how it moves and how it works. And now, I mean, it also looks like it hasn't tried to remain an enigma to us because we're actually in bodies that correspond to it. And so we take this moment and we really access who we are. And that's it. That would encompass the entire message. And the only thing that's left is action. So we're always in action, because now you have to figure out how to build more ladders and different kind of bridges, how to touch into areas that other people have not been successful at getting to. It becomes more like a fun challenge. You want to see and challenge to yourself, but how well can you teach? What kind of, do you have the balancing rod of Hermes? Like, have you gone into your alchemical recesses and grabbed the noble metals and balanced them out and put the crystal on the tip and give it a good whack against a tree to see if the vibration, we have to be that creative, because in that creative fermentation, that's where the seeds of the solar seeds, that's where they rest. So basically our job is to come up with the most massive creative thing that we can come up with. So that way the rays that are always hitting can just land into that and manifest. And it's just that it's just that simple. And there's absolutely nothing that can be done as long as we have the minerals and the nutrients in the soil. And since this is all wet work, it just only has to really do with our souls. Then the number one applicator is us. We should be applying all of this knowledge, these minerals, these plants, and what we know is going to give us good fermentation, make us a good earth, basically, a good planet. The more you put that inside of you, when you come up with one of these ideas, it's now got the kind of fertility that it needs to actually birth itself. So this is what we're dealing with. And that's what every person is going through. Like, they will make different changes to themselves, and those changes will allow them eventually to come up with more ideas and to begin to expand even further. So, it's just, I got big ideas, man. It's quantum. That's what I get to say. It's quantum. So you can have this small idea at first, and then it could keep growing, and you can keep building. Like, think about how many people have started off with nothing and built what is unimaginable to themselves right now. So we're in the fertile ground to do that. So I'm not going to stay long-winded about it. But just to let people know, you chip at the body first, because once that giant comes down, then all of the stuff falls down like a deck of cards. And then you rebirth yourself. And, that's definitely how you want to come into it. It's like you can really say yesterday was a whole another thing going on, but today I'm truly different. And give yourself the ability to do that by if you have to not be around a lot of people who are continuously reverberating that old signature, pull yourself out of that scenario and then be somewhere where you can absorb mainly nature, because that's the mirror. That's going to let you know everything about yourself right there.
Yeah.
And even if you can't feel it at first, like I can remember going into nature when I was in my 20s and, after getting so disconnected and just being there like, man, I want to go back to the city, so we have to admit that a lot of people have gotten themselves into a position where they can't actually tap into nature, but as they stay
nature
persistent.
makes magic, just
Yeah.
when walking the nature, it constantly brings you to the current moment, just unbelievably how powerful that is, and how she is able to bring person to current moment to see the mirrors everywhere.
For
That's
sure.
amazing.
And then also people, I will recommend, if you don't feel like nature, if you get bored in nature, just hang out there. Go to sleep there.
Yeah.
There's always a way to start, right? Because, some people, they go in there like an outing and they sit on the mountain and then they start moving their legs around because the candida.
Yeah.
And they say, oh man, I've got to go home. Like I'm about to leave. I didn't feel anything, but go sleepy then. And then get you a blanket and then just lay out there and then do that. So that's why I'm saying there's always a way. It's just what I'm getting across. Because some people, when they visualize these kind of things, they like, okay, I'm going to set myself up for Saturday. When I go down there, I'm going to go to the Stone Mountain or whatever, and I'm going to sit there. And they'll get there for like 20 minutes. And just because they're still, having that crazy vibration, they'll leave. And then they'll conclude from that point that either they're too disconnected or nature doesn't have anything for them. But, like I said, go there sleepy, then get your blanket and spread it out on the grass and just go to sleep there.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. Try that. So, but definitely get it in because, it's going to connect the person. It's going to reconnect you.
Yeah.
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 So, where are we at? I think we have about 30 more minutes. I'm not sure. Yeah, we have about 30 more minutes. Is there something specific that you, because I know we had some notes here, but, I kind of danced around on quite a few different topics. Definitely some gems in there, though. I mean.
Oh, yeah. That's really, really great stuff, bringing it to a point. Yeah, we had one more point after I crashed twice. The recorder crashed, and then I crashed from Skype because I updated the computer today to Windows 10.
Yeah.
And was hoping this happens, so now I can look for a new recorder. But
Right.
yeah, we have one thing. Yeah, they're not going to come out with an update for me.
Right, I need the update.
Oh boy. Yeah, anyways, we wanted to talk a little bit about, this crazy September that we're experiencing, and that, a lot of people are talking about. There's some dates just a little bit later in the month, and as we said today, there's a lot going on this month. We have, astrologically, Mars and Venus together today, and I'm sure you heard, what's supposed to happen. Some people say September 28th, September 15th, September this and that. Definitely crazy energies, portals opening. What is your take on the timeline right now that we're in?
Well, the first thing is I'm waiting for October 1st so I can laugh at all these people first, because that's what I do. I kind of waited after 2012 because I told them that they were setting themselves up for failure once again, and that this whole idea that the whole thing was going to crack open based on all the data that I gathered wasn't actually going to occur that way. But if there was some internal stuff going on that should not be omitted, and it's the same scenario again. So during the 2012 period, it was very easy to line up your chakra center because the energies were present. They were amplified. And it was because we were amplifying it, though. It's like sometimes you don't know which one is doing it. Like you're like, okay, is this being controlled from the stars, or is this being controlled from people's consciousness? Both. They both work simultaneously. You can't. It's like the chicken and the egg thing. You can't actually say which one is there, and because the egg was there, the egg was in incubation, so the chicken wouldn't even have been aware of it anyway, because the chicken comes later. So it's the same thing that what we're dealing with this timeline. It's like there's one thing going on externally, and this is why I always take the cue. You can always take the cue from Canaan, which is CNN, because if you understand the whole history, they've basically just taken the name of these original people so that they can try to originate things. But they always do it opposite because they're inverted, and they've already proved that they're inverted by their symbolism. So when the inverted one goes out screaming that terribleness is going to happen, like a screeching buzzard over the land, This means that something massive is on the wind. And that has a lot to do with a portal, but not to somewhere. Like as far as another planet or a Stargate or something opening up and then something coming out of it, because that's the whole external thing. What it is a direct connection to higher self. A higher self. There's always a higher self. There's a higher self. You can keep anchoring yourself on greater consciousnesses of yourself, greater versions of yourself. And when portals are open, you just have more access to that. So that way you can rebirth yourself. Because let's face it, the portal is the vagina. I mean, it's the symbolicness of that. Life comes out of it. So it's like some of this stuff can get so Hollywoodized. Like even some of the most conscious people, they just make it Hollywood these days. But all this is nature. So nature's portal is the divine feminine. And so if a portal's opening, then that means that a new life can come out of it. And because everything is geocentric, the only life coming out would be you. So that's what kind of eliminates all of the foolishness, because we're only talking about you. We're not trying to factor in so many different integers that you have no control of, and you will only be speculating and guessing at best if you're trying to interpret what something else is doing, because you're not inside of it. You can do that when you get into more grander stages of all itself, and then you can start becoming everything so you can really feel what it feels. Then you can do it. But as at this stage, the only thing that's really important is the geocentric concept and the geocentric state of consciousness, looking at everything around it and then determining what's going on. So the portal opens up to self. It's clear. Now this self, though, is, let's say it's ancient. Like this version of self actually is a very powerful version. It's gone back all the way to at least extending before the Sumerian period. Before the builders of whoever built those pyramids. This is kind of the portal that is opening. It's like to that space and time. So rather than people getting lost at, trying to see the dogmatic tradition within a specific culture, they should more tap into what were they doing during that time and what were they living out as. And when they're able to do that, then they'll gain a lot of themselves, because that in that particular time and space, the potency of the actions that were going on then were the very foundations to what built who we are now. And then once we have that, then we've complete a big part of our journey. You get where I'm coming from? So it's like when we do the old Ouroboros, meaning we completely make the circle or the circuit, we tie the knot, that end part is where we began. And it's only until the end meets the beginning. That's the divine marriage. When the man meets the woman, it's because they're on two opposite spectrums, but they're now coming together. This means that one from one end of the timeline is now meeting the other one from the other end of the timeline, and they come together. Now, it's a socket, so it has to fit into each other. That seems like sexual, but it is. So circuits must connect, but that's synonymous with time closing. And, so this is what's happening. And it's so much easier to see it when you really think of it that way. And so, of course, the ones running the interference are, it's just static. It's static waves. It's just vibrations and frequencies. It's just talking. They're saying all this is going to happen. There are some actions because, of course, when energy festers, it's going to carry out some kind of activities and actions. But that has nothing to do with a geocentric being. That has more to do with one who begins to choose to inherit that energy. Because think about it. If it's still a choice, you choose whether you want to have positive or negative. And what's most important was that thing that I put up on my Facebook just recently about Dharma and karma, basically, that everyone in the major spiritual traditions, let's say, non-dogmatic, know if you can build up Dharma and not know how to tap into it. Like people who do nice things all the time, they give money to homeless people, but they still kind of, they never, it never happens for them. They're just really good people. But the Dharma, they don't know how to access it, so they don't have a connection. They don't have the portal to that higher self, which is what the Dharma is, okay? So what this is about then, this is about tapping into that And the reason why we know that there's so much of it is because how the physical worlds are built. And this is everything in physics and chemistry will tell you this. Every action, there's a reaction. Most of all of this, if not all of it, is in some kind of it's in equal measure. That's why we have a night and a daytime. So this means that when there's a lot of negativity going on, positivity is actually storing up somewhere, especially if people don't access it. If they don't choose to access it because, everything that's on TV and that's why I say that all these people did is they just infested the spiritual networks now with this crap. They literally almost made people spiritual to turn against them with these kind of messages. And I've seen it come from so many different factions, Hathors and all these different people who once actually didn't have any kind of negative message, just were doing that so they can accumulate hundreds of thousands of people, and then they could pour the sky down on them and tell them opposite to what they told them in the beginning. This message is always going to remain the same. Like, you can't die. So what are you really worried about anyway? And if you truly have trust, not trust in Jesus, trust in yourself. If the whole thing comes apart and it's not your time, you'll be standing on the only little piece that doesn't come apart. And then at that point, you'll finally realize that you're in control of it all. And whether a person wants to take that power, see, because that's the power of a God. That's the power of a supreme being, you see? So this is like, you see something glowing there, but afraid to touch it. A lot of people are afraid to take the wheel and accept that it is what it is with whatever they want it to be. Because that takes going up the ladder, though. It's not what you want when you want it to be on the base pillar. You see what I mean? It's like it's too much. Everything's on top of you. So it's a process. So that's also why we can't confuse talking with the actual procedure. But it is very encouraging to know that the reward of working your way up that ladder, up that mountain, is the same reward if you grind out on the physical level every day in the gym, let's say. You're going to get stronger. You're going to breathe better. You're going to feel better. Your body's going to feel better. So there's rewards for the pain. So the same thing. You climb the mountain. The rewards is you control it all. It's because your frequency is more dominant. So none of the stuff that would be happening raw. I mean, it could be bombs dropping everywhere, and it's just not going to hit. You're not even going to be close to it. And remember, Earth is a big place. There's places that haven't even seen men touching footprints on them yet. So if that's where you end up being because your frequency just keeps guiding you, your frequency is your shepherd. You won't wander from those cycles that you've already made that have equaled all of what you've learned and all of what you know. You see what I mean? That's why when we go to sleep, some of the things that you do in your sleep, especially when you're having those fantastic dreams, it's like you're a pro. You don't need to actually think about how to do it. And this is because this is all in your path. And so you trust your path. See, that's why it's like this is about trusting you. And the more trust that you have in you, then you start realizing what's going on. And then you realize that it's not so much as trusting people individually. It's trusting that everything is the same thing. And sometimes you keep all these things in a nucleus. It doesn't mean you have to, shout it on the rooftops. It's like, sometimes it's like a precious gem. Someone will try to take it away from you. Somebody will try to take away from you the belief that you're in control of everything. And they're very good at it. And remember, we are also trapped in perfection. This means that there's no notion right now that we're actually the supreme beings, but that's the truth. So how do you even get that one going on, right? That's because it's a perfect lie in a sense. It's all designed to make you believe that it is separated, but it's actually together. And then those who begin to realize that graduate from the whole purpose of this, because that would narrow everything down to only one purpose, really. Come out of division. Only way you can get out of divided worlds is to come out of division. If you can be here 500,000 years, they don't care. The universe doesn't care. Cosmos doesn't care. You got to be the one that cares. It's geocentric. You'll always be playing a role in the tarot, so that you have use, you have purpose, you're a star. You see? But it's about, did you take that, or did you see what else is available? And that's what also, as now human beings, we're kind of new at the experience. But just because someone offers something doesn't mean that that's all that's available. That's why I shoot high. I shoot beyond words now. And we can't even talk about what I'm talking about that we're going to get into. I have another level that we can go into it, and I can show it to you. You need to use your imagination and not be afraid. But that's another level that I'd rather communicate on. But again, even when you pull out of that, you'll see how childish and neophyte that is. And then you'll move into even grander space. This is the trips. These are the rewards. So that's why I'm pure optimist. To me, the cup is always half full, because there's no limits to where it can really go. But the last thing I'm going to do is jam myself down into a vortex. And that would be by inheriting all these concepts that the portal to my higher self is actually something negative. And this could be seen as when the person's afraid of who's in the mirror. Eventually, all is self, all will have to be joined and come back to me. These are the mantras. Eventually, everything will join and have to come back to me. You're the only one. You're geocentric to yourself. When you collapse all of the timelines and all of the spaces and the gaps and the schisms, then you will be free, because those are the walls that you're putting up to keep yourself from transcending time. Because all of that stuff goes on in time. It's about the monkey mind. That's really a part of our consciousness that, it grabs. They say the monkey mind will grab the brain, and it will hold the brain to keep it from going beyond what it would be a mammalian frequency. So when we see all these, like the reptilian, the mammalians, the aquatic, those are all frequencies. Those are spectrums. So the mammalian frequency is grounded. You see? So it mainly remains on the ground. So it has that component. That's why the mother, and that's the cow goddess, right? And that's the mother, and she's the one with the milk, but she's grounded. So that's a specific frequency, rather useful. We're not trying to make someone the enemy here. Like I was always, oh, it's the horn god. It's just you're afraid of it before you understand it. But that's the natural process. So the more we get comfortable with that newness, this equals expansion for us. It equals expansion for me. It equals expansion for you. And then the more we do it, the better we get at expressing it, explaining it, etc. That's when we get this change. So remember, we have an archive, and you do just archive information that will be quite tantalizing in the next few years, because people finally understand it. And it'll be like something new for them, because it will be new. And so what we're doing, though, is none of this is fake. So the road in the city that needs to be built, we're building it now. Because just like all this stuff keeps moving, like the technology and all that, there will come a day where we'll be introduced to ether, and everything will change. We'll see the energetic potential. We'll have things that show us the energetic potential within each individual. We will work to raise the energetic potential and balance the energetic potential to cure ailments and disease, because that's what causes ailments and disease. And we're on the brink now. Like I've crossed over. We're just making applicable things that people can use in their everyday life. But make no mistake, there's also other factions from different places, all having this simultaneous idea that even their greed will be their end. What do they mean by that? That means that even the greediness of wanting to try to create something new, to be the first to monetize off of it, will become the same hole that everyone ends up going through. If one of these big companies decide that dealing with things and matters of the soul is more valuable than electronics. You see, so it's almost like when you're dealing with giants, giants are dumb. So you can suggest it to them, and it'll be like it's their idea, and they will trip themselves up. So what am I saying? It's already looming. They already seen how much power was behind the whole go green thing. And why they had the go green that's made from dollar signs, many had the chlorophyll all in their systems, and they changed. So this is what happens with greed. Every action has a reaction. You just have to know what you're dealing with. And then if as a supreme being, you'll start knowing how to do it. So you see how it works? They thought, oh my goodness, we can make all this money off this, go green and organic. Hundreds of thousands of people went green and organic. And then when they went green and organic, they also learned that the companies that were producing most of the stuff they were buying were also basically the problem. And then they started buying from local farmers and people who make organic. So you see how the greed, it doesn't think, it's ignorant. So it will, next move, have everyone seeing the energetic principle of their bodies in order to try to make some money off of something else that opens everyone else up to who they really are. Because how much is there really left? The companies that are coming out now, they can't make money off of doing the same thing. They always have to do something new. So what's next? And we talked about this. We're going into the age of ether because, Ethereum as a currency is coming through. Symbolically, there's actually a currency called Ethereum that all the banks are looking at right now, and they're working with it. Like you got to go to, I think it's ethereum.com, but you'll see, you won't understand most of what is going on there because it's all computer coded stuff. But when you look at the media press, the press and the PR and all that kind of stuff, what you'll see is that major banks are now taking on this Ethereum as a currency and are working with it in their systems. And the reason is because it can't be frauded. And because banks are always suffering from billions of dollars of fraud, then they're looking at it as a potential model. And so this is the race because, see, banks generally cause fraud. They deal with the whole insurance also of fraud. So it's all part of their whole racket. But because you have these other banks that are like, but we're little banks, and if we go to Ethereum, we can eliminate our fraud, and our fraud will actually make us have as much as a big bank. So you see, it's still all greed, but greed in the end. This is why you got to know greed's story. Greed will end up dooming itself. And what that means for all of us that don't function in those kind of components, it means that it's imminent. So I don't know why people are running around here with all the sad faces because, listen to this. This is the last thing I'll say. It's imminent, okay? And the reason why I'm saying that is because even if you let these knuckleheads keep doing the things that they're doing now, they're going to eventually open up the spiritual realm. And we're already going to know what to do when they do that, and we'll be fine. But even on a deeper level, if that just doesn't happen, let's rule that out. It doesn't happen on a timeline. There will come a time in your life, just like there will come a time in my life, where I must go beyond. It's guaranteed. So why am I over here with this sad face? Have a free ticket out of the prison at some point. They call it death, but it's life. You see, it's just our interpretation. That's why they make the interpretation so horrid. And it's because if a person does die wrong, they do have a potential to come back in here again. Dying is like something you got to do well. That's why they say you need to train yourself on how to die. The flesh must die daily. I take the temple down, I build the temple back up. Thousands of cells die daily at every moment and regenerate themselves. Kali and whoever's on the other side, right? There's the Shiva, there's the Kali, and then there's I guess it's Brahm. But these properties are just telling you that, hey, man, why are you looking at death like it's the worst thing that could ever happen? It's the entry into when there's no cages. You leave the body. The body has a rib cage. All of this framework in the body, the bone structure and all this is what is keeping you here. This is what is governing your senses. It's a great experience, but it's also governing you so that you can only do so much, even though the limit of what you can do is hardly being even touched. But still, it has its limits. It will disintegrate at a certain point. So this is how we just line it up for ourselves. What's already going to be great for us is guaranteed as long as we're prepared. All we got to do is just make the preparations. And that's why when you talk to people who have already prepared themselves for that, they're like talking to the greatest people in the world. When you talk to people who are not afraid of death, they don't have all the going on about telling you what's going to happen and how it's going to kill us all and all that because they're not afraid of the ultimate outcome of any of that stuff. So we have to be the same way.
the message of Kali, is yeah, I'm an end, but how is any end not also every time a new beginning?
Right. Well,
Immediately
it's just
after.
like what we said. It's the marriage. We meet our loved one, and I'll tell you this, and this is good to put towards this part of the show, which we're coming to the end. It's like this, and this is how you know what's going to happen. We don't have to speculate here. I'm not into speculations. So 70% of you, no matter what happens, is going to go back and join all there is. Why? 70% of us is water. So even if they seal that casket tight, most of who you are is going to glide right through the casket, right through the pores of all of that dense matter, right up into the sky, and you're going to go see great-grandma and great-grandpa and everyone who supposedly left. But you're going to feel everyone, because 70% of all of us is in that element, and that element cannot be held down. Now, the other parts of us, like the sodiums, which sodium is a metal, the iodines, and the elements, they're going to go back and bond. They're going to bond immediately. So meaning they're going to find their mate right then. There'll be an explosion. So basically, on a microcosmic level, when you leave, there's a light show. There's fireworks. And that joining back with the family, you see what I mean? So that's actually what we will be doing in one massive state of our consciousness, is we will be joining back with our family as the nobles and those that are pure, which are the elements. Now, for those who wish to glide on, this is for the soul travelers. Hello? Those who want to glide on, if they've taken who they are as a being, and they figured out how to inhabit it. This is if you work in your life to create the soul. That's why I said Kundalini is a baby. If you've grown your Kundalini, just like these Tibetan monks and all that, why do they meditate so much? They meditate to grow their soul. They talk about how big your soul is, about 3 feet from the body, right? And then as you keep meditating and you keep bringing in the prana, it gets larger and larger until it can fill an entire room. Pretty soon, it can actually become planet-sized. So if you get into that kind of thing, it's a conscious force. So even when all of who you are joins back with the collective, you have this other form now, and this is why there's such a reward to this form, because it's not a physical body. So it has the ability to transcend time, but also experience everything in time. It's just because of its makeup. And so I believe personally, those who are on the advanced mission, that's what they're doing. They're building their soul. They're accumulating truth, because truth will survive through everything. They're eliminating lies, which are toxins. And then that way, when they leave this vessel, there is something of them. But that something of them, which is like an atom, it's very minuscule, but totally conscious, can pass through everything, including time, thus being able to experience what it wants. And it would have gained that right, just like you don't give keys to a 2-year-old to the dually or the truck or the sports car outside. You wait till they get to the age to where they can get those keys, right? So it's symbolic. You don't get the keys to the craft until you learn how to fly it. Like somebody's going to have you crashing around this whole thing and into someone else's consciousness, and you see, it doesn't work like that. And so because of that, because it doesn't work like that, I mean, these are nobody, even if people said that they have broke these laws and that they are wicked things in high places, and that's not how it works, my friend. You try to get up there and you'll see how it works. Force will hold you back. You cannot go in flesh. And this is what, was being transmitted to me. It was like, look, the reason why all this stuff is on the ground, like the wood, the plants, the trees, all that matter, is because it doesn't come to the air. It's pure up here. You don't bring your tires, you don't bring your plastic, you don't bring none of that. And if you do, it's going to be in a whole nother form. And that will only get as high, right? Like, so even the gases, they don't make it all the way up to the top of the atmosphere, because that's the layers. And what we're powerful enough to do is to put ourselves into a state to where we can get all the way through the bubble. And that won't be by going up there like one of those big ships they have on the Thor movie or whatever, like, you know, this big planet universe site. No, it'll be as a minuscule quirk that can just go through a portal. So this is also synonymous, again, as we're coming to a conclusion of what was the one of the main things that we talked about tonight, which was getting through that portal. You don't get through the portal as this fat glob of dense matter if it's to your higher self. You can get through there if you're going into lower portals. That's what we talked about today. You accumulate more matter. You accumulate more stuff all around you, right? More energies. So these are the directions you choose. If we don't take on negativity, we don't take on much of the bacteria. The negativity kills our body. We think negative. Like, we all know this. Happiness is like a fire. You just fill with light. You have all this energy and you could just dance and sing and all that. But the moment that you start taking on that negativity, it's like, why should I even go out if it's all going to be over with? Here they go. And then you turn on the news because you start eating it. You turn on the news and see, I told you. Remember, this is the biblical tradition. The people that are biblical and Christian, that kind of thing, they eat negativity. They're always trying to find something that's going to confirm that the darkness and the gloom is really going to destroy everything. And that's what they eat. They learn to eat it. And the reason why they learn to eat it is because if you've ever been a Christian, if you ever watched the TV and then something's going on in the news that you feel like is fulfilling a biblical prophecy, you seem to somehow feel confident that you're going to be the one that makes it to God, but everyone else is going to be destroyed. Like, how could that ever get a person anywhere, right? So it doesn't. But they're eating negative energy. They're strengthening themselves over the misfortune of others. That's the Illuminati. You see what I mean? So these are the real correct terms of what this stuff is really about. Let's say, for instance, if in the interpretation of what the Illuminati is today. So again, once we start to really see what's going on, then we bring it all together. When we bring it all together, it's like those Russian dolls. We put them all back into the box. They all have the same meaning, so they cancel themselves out. We are that cancellation. We're positive and negative in the same body. If we weren't so busy being polarized, we would be in the middle. Positive and negative would cancel itself out, thus creating our existence, the steam, and then we would rise. And we've started to do this. The more we cancel out these negativity, it's like, it doesn't even make any sense. Why do I even care? I'm not even like over on that side of the world. I couldn't even do anything anyway. Or some of us know how to use this kind of stuff, this negativity that they keep pushing out. We know how to use it to further our mission in actually bringing more knowledge to people and feeling like we need to do that like now rather than later, right? Like every time I see people struggling and all sad, I'm always here saying, okay, let's get ready to launch a campaign that's against racism then, because, they hit everyone up with the racism thing to make sure that they were polarized right before the pole shift, right before the portal opens, right? All this is the pole. Pole means earth spirit. It means what goes down. This is the Chinese word. It means what goes down when you die. What stays down, the pole stays down, the Han goes up. And that's why the Pope called himself the Pope, because he thinks that he's the ruler of the lower world because he's what stays down. So this is the origins of these words, right? That's why they have po in poor, those who stay down. So, but the same po is the primer materia, basically what is black and blackened, the black snake, that actually becomes able to be metamorphosized because it's just dark carbon, 666, or carbon 12, which becomes the building block yet to another world. So that's when, if you're a Time Lord, these are like this Time Lord 101. You don't move an ocean or a wave or have the emotion when you see this going on, because every action is a reaction. This is like you being in the meditation, all of a sudden something starts to open up in front of you and you think. It closes right back up. Because the only thing that's opening is that's you. Most of what you see, just so people understand this, another key, most of what you see especially as far as light phenomena and things moving around, is your aura. When you're just there in the meditation or looking up at the ceiling, looking at a white wall long enough, and you start seeing all this swirl, that's your aura. That's the easiest way to see it. So you can see all types of things on your aura, because your aura is literally like a mirror. It's like kind of like what's in the chemtrail. It reflects what's coming off of you. It's like your own built-in mirror. So there's, this is the, this is more on the quest. Obviously, there's some tidbits there, but they need more explaining. But people should just know it's all inside of you. Don't miss this opportunity by taking these suggestions from all these people that think it's going to be something happening because they're running some drills and they're scaring the hell out of people. And on top of that, meet me on October 5th so we can go laugh at these people and maybe even start removing some of these people that keep taking thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of our conscious people, because it's one thing to deal with what happens with people who are still yet to be awake. But if we're taking the conscious minds and then we're allowing them, they're putting that kind of message in those minds, and their minds are more fertile for manifestation. So that it could work against us in that way is what I'm saying. That's also why they have the Christians, because the Christians have great energy. Let's just admit, I've met people that have changed their entire lives because they went into Christianity. And before, they were horrible people. They would even admit it themselves. They steal from you and everything. And then at one moment, they changed their life. So they've made a great action, and they've cleared themselves only to inherit another variation. It's very sneaky variation, but another variation of the negativity again. And so, by putting themselves on another side of the fence, it's just like polarization. Where we want to be is we want to be in the center. And that requires us, this is your duty, is to not get into the whole emotion game. The emotions cloud your senses, Jedi. It's like, it's not something that you can really keep engaging in one angle to another. You must be strong, because think about it. If you're an elder of the tribe and you're constantly crying and falling apart, man, that's going to tear the tribe apart. You must be there. You know how you see Sitting Bull, like just straight faced? It's like you don't see the faltering. You only see the strength. You see what I mean? So people, when they see the strength, they know everything's going to be fine. But if the people that they believe in and they look up to are telling them that it's all over, come on. And that's what I say, like people that, we have to understand that when we take this responsibility, because it's us that does this, to be teachers. Like someone told me a long time ago, you're the one that wrote the book. You need to straighten up, because this is all about, first of all, it's all about integrity here. Remember that. Yeah, I don't care who's watching or if nobody's watching, but you're the one that wrote the book. So since you put that in play, that's like your child. You have to take that through its full course, and everyone who listens to that, because shoot, nobody told you to write the book but you. So manage it. And so that was years and years ago when I just started feeling like, hey, maybe I should just really, pull away from this whole thing and go back into the mountains. Like, hold on. Nobody told you to write the book. Now that you've written the book, now, you must see it through, because there are definitely people who are benefiting from this, despite, the few messages that you get from crazy folks. So anyway, so that's the whole thing. It's like really getting into this. We're like kids, basically, growing up and becoming adults. And we're doing that with each other. And that's just the strangest thing. It's like you're not doing it necessarily with your parents. You're not doing it with, so many other external components. You're doing that right here, right now, with me, with Stefan and Christina. So, and then until we can accept that, it's just like chasing our tail. But when we understand the power of this moment, and then we realize like this is all structured and tailored for you, then you can see the portal in September, so that's what I'm saying. A person listening to this, getting it in September, is going to have a hard time believing that the portal is something negative when they just heard, for many people, probably one of the greatest things that they've ever heard in life about letting themselves be free from all the guilt, from all the fear, and from all the hatred, and that it's justified that you should do that to advance. Because a lot of people feel like the only way that if they don't get into this stuff, that they don't advance. It's actually like that in people's mind. They feel like if they don't blog about it, they don't think about it, that they don't care about it, that they're ignoring it, and that they're doing the ostrich and sticking their heads in the sand, and just because they're not saying something about it. But trust me, saying something about it has never really meant anything. We have to really realize that only our actions are what change things. And because all of our actions are creating the vibrations. So my first action is always never to absorb myself into the negativity. I'll watch, just a watcher part of you. You will hang out from the cosmos and just look down on the whole thing and decide what you're going to do. I just always make what I'm going to do constructive. And so right now, since they're playing the whole 2012 game all over again, it's like they keep just rewinding things. And they've always been, I don't want to say it as they, but this always keeps happening. So I'm sure, watch this, once we get over September, it's going to be December. Right? They're going to cook it up again. And as conscious people, we're going to get, after a while, it's going to be like the boy who cried wolf. We're not going to pay attention to it anymore. We're just going to start to create what comes next. And then, it won't fill up the channels anymore. And this is what alternative media is also doing for us. It's giving us our own stations to go to and not be able to tap into that. Again, it just kind of is counterproductive when the stations that we tap into that tell us all of what we need to know and give us that harmonic boost come back at us with the craziness one day. And but we all go through it. I'm not saying nothing's wrong with it. This is all part of the growing process. Like I was the king of it, something for a while, and so, but after a while you start feeling the energy inside and you know what's going to be better for you. So that's what's up, my lovelies. It's been an excellent time. I want to give a special shout out to everyone that is definitely involved in really pushing the message. Definitely the Secret Energy team, my wife, Dulce Ruby, True Sparta, Luis, Pablo, Carlos. I can just go on and on like we're giving the shot out on one of the end of those really great albums. But, obviously Opthink, True Frequency, there's a lot of us, more than people think. And we're going to change things, and we've already changed things. Like, that's the other thing is we're going to change things because we always got some new stuff coming, but we've already changed things. And so it's definitely important for us now to step into our power and keep linking, and then also invent. I always love to conclude my shows with that, is that, remember, you got to be innovative. There's a powder keg of elements out here, trees and nature and all sorts of stuff. So if you just create the idea, you also synonymously create the mineralization that it needs to manifest.
Yeah, and also we have to take responsibility to be able to respond to our own actions in first place.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's a process. Like, that's the other thing. Like, the parent is not looking at the child all crazy because it doesn't know math at 2 years old, or it doesn't know how to tie his shoes you see, so you got to realize that if there's anything that the cosmos is doing, it also has the big disclaimer going on. Like, well, it can always say, this is the stage that they're in. So that's also how we have to do it. It's like, how much do we expect people to really do anyway when they just got slammed with 40 years of I don't know where I came from? So, we just have to be available. That's where the compassion comes in. And then when we have that compassion, we also are much more optimistic. And when we're in that optimism, then our imagination turns on. That imagination turns on, then we become inventive, which is, now you're in the Tesla arena. Now you're in the Rife arena. And then that you can create something that will change everything. Just like they say, every now and then something comes along that changes everything. We are that. And because they can admit it, because you couldn't see, there's the ancient Egyptian empire. Why aren't we like the ancient Egyptians right now? Something came along and changed everything, right? Each time there's a whole empire and there's a whole all that. Everyone's doing something one way. Something comes along and changes everything. We're that. When we take that position, like, we have it all. We have everything that we need. We have more than they had. So that means that even our what we can create will be even greater, and we'll all share in it. So I just encourage everyone, let's break down these walls of time. Let's connect with the totality of energy, our ancestors, our loved ones. Let's become the part of this whole collective that we really are, meaning just be you. You know, I'm not trying to make a bunch of sevens. Everyone has their own spin to this, right?
As a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, just put your spin on it is what I'm saying. Like, definitely, I will say we have mentors. You learned English, you've learned math, you've learned spirituality even, or certain aspects, yoga. So we have mentors. And then, you know, you find yourself in sun salutation. Do you think you're the first one ever done sun salutation? No, of course not. So this is what we do with what we learn, though. I'm sure there was a first one who did the sun salutation and was like, this is it. So we have to learn to really to be that, right? So that's the happiness. That's the joy.
Yeah.
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 Wonderful words. Wonderful gems we discussed here tonight. Sevan, thank you so much. And
Man, more than welcome.
we'll get together soon, right after September, maybe.
For sure. Yeah. You know me. You know, when it's time again, I will arise.
For sure.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
All
Thank
right.
you so
Wonderful
much.
show.
All right. Have a great evening.
Okay. You too. Bye-bye.
We all want to see, we all want to be real, and we're searching when we're finding. We all want to feel the taste of belief, and we search for directions where we meet with our fears. We all want to steer, we want to appear, even in the highest battle, face the unreal. Do you feel the grace of fear? There is no need to disappear. Just take fear and get clear. Of fear, there is no need to disappear. Just